This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hi, it's Kirstine Thorne here. Make sure you join me for Saturday breakfast when we'll wake you up bright and early and get you in the mood for the weekend.
Thank you for downloading the Countryside Hour podcast from BBC Radio Norfolk. Please don't call or text as the lines are now closed. You can find more of our programmes to stream or download at bbc.co.uk/Radio Norfolk.
And this is the BBC Radio Norfolk Countryside Hour. Chris Skinner from High Ash Farm at Caister St Edmund has landed. Hello, Chris.
Good evening, Matthew. Good evening, everybody. Lovely to be here out of all that wind.
And the rain as well. There's an awful lot of standing water on the fields,
Yes,
isn't there?
there is. I farm just on the east side of the Tass Valley, which joins the River Yare at Norwich. And the water meadows are doing exactly what they're meant to do. And there's some lovely, huge tracts of water from Caister St Edmund, well, from Dunstan they start and they go all the way down to Lakenham, and there's hardly any fall in the river, so the whole thing becomes a lake. There's swans, lots of species of gulls there swanning about on the water, and it's a fantastic sight, and it's holding the water up at Lakenham there so that it doesn't overwhelm the River Yare on its way down to Yarmouth. So interesting time. But also they say every cloud has a silver lining. We've lost, I think, 13 large trees at the farm in the last fortnight. But as I was coming into the studio, I actually thought it must be the record month ever for wind farm harnessing electricity off the Norfolk coast. There's a big farm at Scroby off the coast of Yarmouth, and we must be generating huge amounts of electricity from renewable sources at the moment. I've never known such a long, windy period of time for many years.
Yes, I suppose if the windmills can stand up to this wind,
yes.
You know.
I don't know if they close them down after a certain wind speed.
Oh, I'd hope not.
No, I'd hope not. But it's really interesting. The statistics for electricity production for the month of February are going to be quite interesting to see.
At this point last week, Chris, you were showing me things in the kitchen in the oven with these marvellous seeds going everywhere, and we had a nice note from Ivan, who says, I was just wondering if Mr. Skinner cleaned the oven and the kitchen after both of your escapades last week.
Yes, I'm still cleaning it out. The problem is it's a fairly new oven and it's got a fan on it, and to start off with, I mistakenly had the fan going before you arrived at the farm.
You better explain what we were up to.
Well, I harvested late last summer some thistle heads before the seeds actually dispersed themselves, and because it always fascinates me, thistles seem to, at certain times of the year, towards the end of each summer, the whole air is filled up with thistledown. I think there's a farm on the outskirts of Wymondham called Thistledown Farm, actually, but it's a really invasive weed and it causes a big problem for farmers, particularly in the earlier part of the last century. Thistles growing in your cereal crops are a nightmare because the species of thistle I was talking about are called creeping thistle, and they're perennials, so they have long roots under the ground, but each year they produce wonderful flowers which bees love. It's a lovely lavender colour flower, but then later on, once that thistle head starts to ripen, there's around 100 seeds in each little thistle head, and on warm days they open up. It's just like magic. So I thought on a wet day when you visit the farm, we'll do that, and I harvested some of these heads before they had a chance to open, popped them in the oven at 30 degrees centigrade, which sort of copies a warm summer's day.
Miraculously, they started bursting
you
open.
You almost jumped backwards when it happened, didn't you? It was quite a shock.
The the interior of the oven gets covered in thistledown.
Yes, it did. The problem is I managed to clean the fan at the back of the oven, but what I hadn't realised is there's a ventilation system between the oven glass and the front of the oven glass. It's double glazed, in other words, and I have thistledown just to remind me of this foolish thing I've done until I learned to take the oven door to pieces to get the down out. But it was well worth it, because why it fascinates me is thistles shed their seeds depending on which way the wind's blowing. It's a pioneering species, and the little plumes at the top of the seed actually open up rather like you see dandelion seeds. They're both similar way of seed dispersal, relying on the wind, and the warmth of the sun gets trapped in the thistledown, so it becomes like a little hot air balloon. So when all those little phyllo plumes open up, it's exactly like a hot air balloon. The sun's on them, up they go, and it's kind of defying gravity because there's a tiny little basket, not of people at the bottom, but the tiny little seeders at the bottom, and off they go. Just an amazing natural phenomenon to see, and I was foolish enough to try it in my oven. Yeah. That'll teach me.
You didn't cook anything for me, though, did you? There's no food involved.
No. You'd have been
no
down.
Lunch.
You'd have been down in the mouth had I have done
cheese scones or anything, cheese on toast or anything like that.
I love cooking, so that's one of my winds me down at the end of the day, and just get the vegetables and pop them all in the oven.
Well, let's wind you up now because we've got the countryside sound now. This is your rural riddle.
Yes, and it's been windy for 2 weeks, and I haven't been able to harvest. I was recording right until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Got lots of lovely sounds being made, but the wind predominates the sound. So from the 26th of February last year, I harvested tonight's rural riddle at High Ash Farm. So it's exactly a year old. It's a sound that you can hear at this time of the year. And here comes tonight's rural riddle.
Quite a few contributors there, but you're after the main singer.
Yes, I certainly am. You get half a point for anybody that's mentioned that's contributing in the background. I don't give any clues because our listeners are far too sharp for me to pull the wool over their eyes, and they don't need clues. So it's a kind of 7 out of 10, I suppose, the score. I usually rate our rural riddles. It is always just for fun, and if we can, we do our very best to mention your name if you get it right just before we go off air at 7 o'clock.
This is Chris's rural riddle, the mystery sound. We'll keep the lines open till 5 to 7, and we need you to identify the author of that sound. And it's a year old, but it was this time of the year. And, well, the number to ring, if you can give us any answers, 0800 389 7321. Or text messages to
81333. Just start your message with the word Norfolk and standard network rates apply.
Had an email from Peter in Norwich. Peter says, is it too early for a starling to have raised a chick to a fledgling? I'm sure I saw one on my window ledge being fed by a parent bird while the other was nearby. This was last week. I didn't have time to contact you then. Starlings are nesting in a 1¼ inch hole left when the sink waste was removed. They've done this for 2 years now. Noises suggest there might be young ones there as well. I can't imagine they have much room.
No, they can quite happily survive in the cavity between the walls, and of course it's nice and warm in there, so they're not exposed in the same way to the elements at this time of the year. But it's entirely possible for starlings to be nesting at this time of the year, to have eggs and to have young in the nest. There are already reports of blackbirds with youngsters in the nest, and they're doing quite well, apart from the continual wet. If the nest is pretty well sheltered, and in the case of this starling, it's a super spot to choose, and it's quite secure. And I can imagine the size hole. It's about the old waste holes are usually about 1¼ inch diameter coming out of the house. Starling will investigate that, and I've copied that in quite a few of the farm buildings at High Ash. The hollow concrete block walls, knocked holes in with a hammer. Yes, I do all sorts of strange things in the name of encouraging wildlife, and the starlings go in there, and it's a busy thoroughfare. It's right by the entrance to the feed store on where the ladies store all their horse feed for the horses, and there's people walking past there every minute of the day in daylight hours, and the starlings just watch, and as soon as they can, they dart in, and it's very secure, that sort of nest site. So, it's entirely possible, and there's lots of reports of early nesting all around the county. One of the trees that fell over on the farm this week also had a jackdaw's nest in with, I think, 3 eggs in there, nice fresh eggs, and yes, we did a little piece on that on the farm at lunchtime.
Anna, who lives near Harleston, has sent a note and a link to a video as well. The most amazing thing for me, the barn swallows' nests in my barn corridor weren't used last year except for a very brief visit. Recently, a wren has been coming back backwards and forwards on the occasional day. And then the other day, I looked at the nest and thought the bird was back. And then I realised it wasn't a wren. I think it's a long-eared bat. A very few seconds onto the video, you can see it more clearly. It stayed for about 2 minutes. Wow, wow, wow. Can you confirm it's a long-eared bat? And Anna gets excited. I mean, obviously it's lovely, isn't it?
I'm hugely excited because long-eared bats are really, really special. They're very distinctive for a number of reasons. Long-eared bats are called long-eared bats because they've got very long ears, and the ears are almost equal to the length of the body. And it's one of the few species of bat, when they're actually flying at night, you can actually see the ears as they're flying round.
And there's the footage. Yes, that's a bird's nest there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It says fantastically. Can you see the length of the ears there, Matthew? That's a lovely little bit of footage. It's clambering about. They're quite harmless and really stunning. So the ears are all crinkly, and often when they hibernate, they fold the ears, they crinkle up, and they fold their ears right down behind their head because obviously they're very prone to frostbite when they hibernate. Their ideal hibernation temperature is about 0 degrees centigrade, so they don't like being in houses, or they can be in an attic if it's well insulated. By that I mean cold in the attic, and often hollow trees are probably the best bet for them, so they'll overwinter, go to sleep for 3 months at least. They've got 2 choices about staying here. They either do what some of our insect eating migratory species do and hibernate down, go right down south to the Mediterranean, or with the swallows right down to South Africa, or they hibernate. That's the choice, because there's very few flying insects around for bat species in the winter months. Now, long-eared bats are absolutely incredible. There's a couple of sort of secrets about them, if you like. Most bats will use echolocation to find their prey, flying insects. They send out sonar signals, ultrasonic sound really, and they can sense small insects flying about in the ear. So long-eared bats have a special trick. With these huge ears, they emit an incredibly high-frequency sound, ultrasonic. We cannot hear long-eared bats, and it is so sensitive they can differentiate between a leaf and an insect sitting on the leaf. So they have a whole array of food stuffs available to them which are not available to other bats. What they can also do is hover. So they virtually hover vertically, certainly at about 45 degrees in front of a branch, send out this sound, and they can actually sense if a caterpillar's on the leaf, and then they will just dart forwards and actually grab it off the leaf surface. And that is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so, expert flyers then.
Really expert. So they can almost, we think they can get food off the ground as well. Though they have the ability to differentiate, if you like, which other bats don't do. If it's an insect flying in the air, they take lots of moths in the autumn, and noctuid moths is a favourite part of their diet and fattens them up before they go into hibernation. And long-eared bats have kind of got another statistic that is quite amazing. I don't know, I'm pretty good at live weights, but I'm going to put you in at about 12 stone, probably, body weight.
Oh, you're good.
That's roughly
I might be a couple more.
Well, a couple of pounds either way, but because I used to do livestock weight judging at young farmers.
So when you look at me, you size me up.
I do, actually do, yes. I'm not going to throw a left-hander.
How much per pound would you get from me then?
I'm not sure.
Not very much.
Yes, you'd be a porker if I sold you as a fat pig. But they're all different weights. You have bacon weight, porker weight, and all sorts of different weights. And pigs are weighed in scores, which are 20 pounds. So that's how it's a different measurement. So a good weight would be 5 score. But anyway, if I go back to the bat, I don't think any other mammal gives birth to such a heavy youngster, roughly about a third of its weight. So in human terms, if you're 12 stone and you gave birth to a young long-eared bat, it would weigh about 4 stone. So I can hear ladies all around the county groaning at this. So about a third of your body weight is the weight of the youngster. Just one youngster a year. So it's quite slow. But bats, long-eared bats in particular, can live quite a long time, even 20 years. So they don't necessarily breed every year, but they're absolutely stunning. Once you learn about, this old saying, bats need friends, but they're so harmless and innocuous, even if you pick one up, they're not likely to bite you. But they're the ones that are most likely to come into your bedroom at night, although most people probably get them out of the window as quickly as they can without seeing what species it is. But well done, Anna.
Well
That's
done.
a stunning piece of footage.
And
Very,
now,
very special.
Anna, we know what you look like as well, because next to your video, there's a little photograph
Is
of you.
that? No, I didn't notice that. But
Yes, because we've been speaking about some of Anna's photographs for many years now, haven't we?
Yes, no, she's very
Now
adept.
we've got a face to the voice.
Oh wow! And you don't look like your subject. It doesn't look bat-like at all. So,
So I'm sure you'll take that in good stead, Anna. Otherwise, I'll smack his legs for him.
sack me. Yes.
We've got a mystery sound, haven't we? Let's have a listen to it again. This recorded on the farm a year ago.
Yes, 26th of February 2019.
Because with the high winds recently, recording is pretty noisy and difficult business. Julie in Norwich says the sound is a redwing. George reckons it's a blackcap. Rick says the sound is a blackbird. Got another one for blackcap here. Chris in Wyndham. One or two others saying blackcap as well. Bob in Beccles. Chris in Wyndham, as we mentioned. Also George in Fretnam. Redwing, says Julie in Norwich. Hedge sparrow is Terry's suggestion, calling from Norwich. Dunnet and wood pigeon is the considered answer from Bernard in Great Witchingham. And blackbird, says Rick. So we've gone around there.
We have. I like the variety. I keep my poker face on, I'll warn you, till just before 7 o'clock. No clues, and you can't wheedle anything out of me. But this is a redwing. Unusual for them to sing in the United Kingdom, but we had a redwing roost.
So it's not redwing.
No, and another one was blackbird, so we can knock a blackbird on the head.
So it's not blackbird, it's not redwing. Could be any of the others we've mentioned or none of them at all.
No, I don't have necessarily all the sounds in front of me to disprove whether we have right or wrong answers.
Richard in Sheringham says it's a European goldfinch. Well, those are all the answers so far. Let's hear the sound again. This is Chris's rural riddle, the mystery sound that we're identifying. Got half an hour to go before we close the lines. Good luck, and you can give us a call with your answer on 0800 389 7321. It's a free number to call. Alternatively, just text on your mobile phone, text the word Norfolk and then your answer and who you are, and the number is 81333. John Reed lives on Unthank Road in Norwich, and he says for years we've fed the foxes and watched them with low-level lights in the garden. They came every night and we recognised individuals and named them. Sometimes there would be up to 4 of the foxes altogether. However, about 12 months ago, this all stopped, and we've not seen one at all since then. Do you think they've been shot? Or what? Have you heard anything about the Norwich fox population?
Yes, I have heard about the Norwich fox population. Quite a number of those foxes were actually culled, sadly. There were some complaints about them, and there was a professional marksman came in close to the Unthank Road area. There were complaints about foxes in the garden and foxes making a lot of noise at night. And unfortunately, I think 6 were culled, whether they were the particular ones or not, but there is another set quite close, another earth I should say, quite close to Sainsbury's, in the middle of Norwich on the old Brazen Gate railway line. So there's some more foxes there, and there's also some on Mousehold Heath.
So they've been spared?
Yes, well they're not known about necessarily, because they do distribute themselves quite wide. The reason they're near the Brazen Gate is at where the old railway line comes in under Hall Road. There's a row of shops there, and there's a fish and chip shop, and quite a lot of our food waste is left there for leftovers from the chip shop there, and they thrive quite well on that. It's near the old railway arch, but they're pretty well safe there, unless again somebody complains and they're culled. It's not illegal to do that. There are professional people that will come in under licence and dispose of them. It's always sad because people get very attached to their foxes, and it's just one of those things that happen. It's a bit sad.
George in Frettenham says, asks, would Chris ever consider introducing beavers to High Ash Farm? Because there is this introduction thing going, isn't there?
Yes, it is. Beavers were part of our native mammal population centuries and centuries ago, and they're being reintroduced in the same way that little owls became extinct at the end of the last ice age, and they've been reintroduced in Nottinghamshire in the mid-1800s, and they're thriving. And in certain places in the United Kingdom, beavers have been reintroduced, and they're doing quite well. And again, this phenomenon of holding water up in the upstream levels, they chew through branches, sometimes quite large trees, 6-8 inch diameter, and they sort of fall any which direction, but hopefully across water, and that holds the water flow up. And the Environment Agency actually copying this beaver dam experimentation up particularly in the high rainfall areas of the country. I know we feel we've had a lot of rain here in the eastern counties, but it's absolutely gnat's kneecaps, so to speak, up over in the west of the country. In Cumbria, for instance, they've had well over 100 inches of rain up there, and average rainfall in the eastern counties is about 30 inches a year. It seems though it's been raining forever, but we were so dry, the water table was very low on agricultural land, and this form of rain that we're having, little and often at the moment, is actually recharging our aquifers here in the county of Norfolk. We mine an awful lot of water to come out of our drinking taps. Remember, we're at the driest side of the country, and
we are semi-arid in Norfolk, aren't we?
Over 20,000 cubic metres a day coming out from under High Ash Farm.
We're midway through our Monday night countryside hour with Chris Skinner, and we've had a stunning photograph sent through from Elsie, who lives near Ickborough. And Elsie says, on Saturday, while sitting in the kitchen looking out at the usual bird feeder action, all the blue tits and the finches and the robins, etc., I was shocked, to say the least, when a very large bird flew directly into the window. Assuming it would be a wood pigeon, size and thud, I was surprised to see this pictured animal, a stunning and stunned bird. It was clearly dazed and held its wing. It was a privilege to see such an awesome bird up close. It spent some minutes perched on the parasol before taking flight. Thank goodness it was okay. Having checked out online and considering the Brex is a known goshawk habitat, I'm hopeful that this is a goshawk. And look at that photograph, very close up and clearly a bird of prey.
Yes, I'm pretty certain it is a goshawk. Yes, it's a bit difficult to see the scale because goshawks with the barred breasts and the little white stripe right above the eye there, very, very similar to sparrowhawks. And I can see it stunned. You can sort of see it looks a bit dazed, and the left-hand wing is hanging down a little bit.
So the poor thing flew into the window.
Yes, and you probably have got the imprint of that particular bird on your window. Often there's quite a lot of dust in the plumage, and when they hit the window like that, particularly with owl species, you'll sometimes have an imprint. Collared doves are another one that usually leave a lovely print on your window. A lot of the time they escape, they sort of sit on the ground for a minute and regain composure, and the thump is because if they're hunting, they're completely unaware of the glass on your windows. They're probably giving chase to a blue tit or a robin, something like that. It's quite difficult to see the scale of the bird, to see whether looking at the size of the bird against the parasol, it's a fair bet it's a goshawk.
He looks quite big,
which
actually.
we have at High Ash Farm. Sparrowhawks, particularly the male sparrowhawk, is quite a diminutive bird. Female sparrowhawks quite a lot bigger, getting close to the male goshawk in size, and then the female goshawk's quite a considerable bird of prey.
Look at the talons on that.
Yes, overlocking. Again, sparrowhawks and goshawks are similar feet, sort of overlocking devices. And can you see the claws on the feet, Matthew?
They look lethal, don't they?
They don't only serve to grip, but they actually penetrate through the plumage into the skin, and so the overlocking mechanism on the feet actually lock into and that's really what often causes a death. Then they're torn to pieces. Sounds gruesome, but it's just a natural part of the environment, and predators and prey in my books are equally welcome, so I don't discriminate between the two.
Rick lives in the Tuxwood area of Norwich, and he says, we have a property and a friend that live on Lavengro Road in the city, and one neighbour had chickens and rabbits. Sadly, they were all killed by foxes on Mousehold Heath. We live in the Tuxwood area, and now there are foxes here as well.
Yes, they're the ones I mentioned almost certainly on the Brazen Gate railway line there, and I gave advice to the council to help open that up because there's a walkway, it's where the coal line used to be. There's still a railway arch which is Hall Road on top of it, and under that arch there are pipistrelle bats roosting and staying in the little bits of masonry that's fallen out in some of the brickwork. And interesting, if you walk under that bridge, you can see the old steam train lines, the black smoke that stained the brickwork underneath. So the line coming in and a line coming out that you presumably used to join into the line from London and head off as well northwards to bring the coal down. And there was a coal yard there where the current Sainsbury's supermarket is, and my father used to go up there and we'd collect a ton of coal on one of the farm trailers. And
was that the Victoria station there, wasn't it?
I'm not sure what it was called. It was the Brazen Gate line. Yes. I know that much.
Which is now Sainsbury's, isn't
yes,
it?
It is. You might be right. It was probably called the Victoria station. It was quite a formidable complex there with lots of old railway-style buildings still there around. St Francis House is one of them. They're all built by that era.
Shall we have another listen to your mystery sound?
Yes, that would be really good.
Here it comes. Nick in Blow Norton reckons your sound is a wren. What else have we got here? We've got one or two others. Is it a field fair, says Richard in Poringland. And loads more for blackcap. Madeline in Snettisham says it's a blackcap and wood pigeon in the background. Matt and Al in their van, they reckon it's a blackcap. So does Jeff in Rocklands, who reckons it's a blackcap establishing his territory. Blue tits, though, is the answer from Scylla in Claxton. Skylark, says John in Burnham Market. And Cliff in Wareham reckons your sound is a missile thrush.
It gets more and more intriguing. I love the variety. And somebody called in earlier, or texted in, and said he thought it was a dunnock. And I've found the cheerful sound of a dunnock or a hedge sparrow. Come along. Don't be shy. There it is.
Steve in Richmond Park says, I think this evening's rural riddle is a blackcap. I've not heard one yet this year, but I'm listening eagerly. I'm sure they're arriving daily from the south, whilst our wintering German blackcaps are probably thinking about going the other way. They come from Germany, though.
They can do. One interesting thing about blackcaps is that they seem to be spending more and more time in the United Kingdom rather than migrating. As long as there's enough food for them, people have recorded them on bird tables, visiting bird feeders, sort of sparrow-sized bird with the male with a distinctive black cap. Another answer here we have in front of us is skylark. Yes, I can see.
All aboard the Skylark. Yeah.
Yes,
so
not
there
the
are one or
Skylark,
two answers there.
And another wrong one as well. I try and knock as many as I can on the head. So this is fieldfare.
So, Chris, we've got another 10 minutes before we close the lines on the mystery sound. Should I play it again, do you think?
Yes, go on one more time.
Here he comes. You've heard all the different suggestions. What do you think? 10 more minutes and then we'll close the lines. Give us a call with your answer. 0800 389 7321.
And I can knock another wrong answer on the head. Missel thrush singing.
Missel thrush, more of a measured performer.
Yes, it is. It's not quite as accomplished as our resident song thrush, which is much smaller. And even worse than that, missel thrushes, if they get a little bit cross and possessive with a particular tree, they're saving it for the lady of their life, they will utter this sound. Pretty horrendous. Very aggressive.
If they take over a tree, they'll defend it virtually for their lives, won't they?
They will. The family cat and even the family dog, and I've been dive-bombed as well.
By missel thrush.
By missel thrush, yes.
But the answer to a mystery sound isn't missel thrush. We'll find out what it is just before we close at 7 o'clock. Now, more questions. Neil has emailed. We heard a frantic scraping in the corner of our bedroom as if something was trying to get under the tiles and into the loft. Then it stopped, started again in the opposite bedroom, again in the corner. We were concerned as recently we had a grey squirrel trapped in the loft and had to have it dealt with, as they can often cause damage. I checked the loft and there was no sign that anything had got in. I went outside and could see nothing. Then suddenly a beak and a head appeared from behind the fascia board at the corner of the house. It disappeared and the scratching continued with the odd feather floating out of the gap. I did manage to take a photograph and it looks like a starling to me. It continued in and out of the gap making plenty of noise for several minutes, but we haven't seen it since. What on earth was it doing? Surely they don't nest at this time of the year. And there's the photograph.
Yes,
and it looks like a starling to me.
Perfect picture, and it's an absolute typical nest site. It's exploring. It probably has laid eggs already. Many starlings have done. You'll see the murmurations that are quite common across the country are diminishing by considerable numbers each day. We're into milder weather. Longer hours of daylight are the main trigger for birds to start pairing up and nesting and egg laying. It stimulates the pituitary gland at the base of the head. Anybody that keeps poultry, it's been quite dark over the winter months. You can add light at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, extend the hours of light that the poultry is exposed to, and that will precipitate earlier egg laying as well. So very typical spot for them, very safe in there as well, and probably nesting in the cavity or just inside on the ledge at the top of the wall. They don't really make a nest nest with much material as such. It's often a little scraping some dust. Occasionally they'll take a few feathers in, maybe a little bit of dry grass, and the eggs are beautifully clear blue, same colour blue, sky blue as a song thrush's egg, but without the little brown speckling on which the song thrushes. And a song thrush will make a beautiful cup-shaped nest lined with mud. Starling's nest is much cruder because it's usually in a hole. Old woodpecker's holes are a great favourite, and you'll often hear the male starling just singing or courting his female with his head just out of the woodpecker, so just attracting any passing females. And the more variety and complexity of his song, which is often mimicry, the more likely he is to attract a mate. Just listen to this. This is one starling.
It's not a chicken, it's a starling.
This is a starling. So it's really a list of where they've been feeding during the day. And so it's a list of good sites to visit. You hear this sound, you're likely to get some food. Obviously, a chicken run, or a bantam more precisely in this case, is a good place to find some food. So whether the lady of his life, or he will certainly know where those sites are. And so they're really very energetic at this time of the year. And very importantly, they bathe together as well. This is a freshly hatched brood with mum and dad in my bird bath.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Absolutely, and feather care, even at this time of the year, is crucial when you have to get through dark nights. So it's nothing like bathing with a friend, they say.
Sue in Norwich has sent a question through which I asked you earlier, didn't I, off the air? But I'll ask it as Sue says it, because she says, a year or two ago, Chris, you told us that the white flowering bushes at this time of year that look like blackthorn aren't. Blackthorn comes into flower a month or so later, you said. Perhaps you said some sort of plum is the answer. I can't remember, and I can't find it in any other sources.
Right. Oh, very interesting.
She was paying attention, though.
Yeah, that's very good. There are three sort of times of white flowering shrubs out in the Norfolk countryside. We're talking about we're out in the Norfolk countryside rather than garden species, of which there are many that come into flower in gardens at this time of the year. And the ones out in the hedgerows, out in the Norfolk countryside at the moment, are the Marabella plum species. So the little petals are in the form of a cross. They're almost like crucifers, a different member of the plant family. And they come into flower very, very early. And they are the kind of ancestors of many of our cultivated plum species, things like Victorias, Czars. They are either related to the Marabella plum or the next one I'm now going to talk about, which is the blackthorn as well. Prunus spinosa is the blackthorn. The spiny plum, in other words, that's its Latin name, and that gives us, the sloes later on in the year, and one of my favourite drinks is sloe gin, of course. We won't talk about that. And then the third one actually comes into flower much later, when it's in leaf. The first two, the Marabella plum and the blackthorn, come into flower before they come into leaf to help pollination and sort of from the early flying insects. And the third one is hawthorn, which is a good clue to its name because its other name is May, and that's when it comes into flower. So you've got all three species there.
But these are wild plums.
Yes, they're all...
And there's lots of... I mean, you drive down any street at the moment or in the countryside, and you can see this white blossom, can't you?
And it's unusual for blackthorn. Normally blackthorn is in flower. It might be a little bit earlier this year because of the mild winter, probably in early to mid-March, that kind of... But normally it's towards towards the end of March, and there's a specific time of the year that's given to blackthorn flowering, and it's called the blackthorn winter, because it's normally associated with some quite cold, brisk winds that we get towards the end of March before we sort of enter spring properly. And it's so good, the blackthorn winter, and that usually coincides with some cold weather, which affects pollination. But nevertheless, it's lovely. It kind of brightens you up on your way to work at the moment.
I think it's wonderful.
It's a lovely natural native display, and it flowers on last year's growth as well. So particularly the blackthorn is also related. The rootstocks originally for our cultivated plums, like Victoria, like Zars, and several other the plum species, are all related off the rootstocks of the blackthorn and the Marabella plum. My mum used to make Marabella chutney and Marabella jam. Nothing was wasted. It was all in kilner jars in the storeroom in the farmhouse.
Well, here's a question from Phil, who says, we have a cherry tree in the garden which at this time of the year is covered in blossom. This year we've noticed that the blue tits, the great tits, and even wood pigeons sit in the tree pecking at the blossom, which falls to the ground. We've looked at the blossom and can see no evidence of grubs or caterpillars or any other insects. Why do you think they're doing this? Could it be the nectar?
Yes, they eat the pollen, because pollens are really nutritious, and obviously pollen's very important for them. There are also insects in there that you might not see, because there's many species of moth, the females of which are wingless, and they're called micro moths. They will climb up in the tree, and the males will find them at night because the females emit a special perfume called a pheromone, and the males can detect them, mate with them, and that will also happen quite soon in the apple orchards when they come into flower as well. So it can be a variety of sources, particularly blue tits and great tits, long-tailed tits, sort of look around in there because they're actually tiny, almost microscopic insects that are attracted to the blossom, that they themselves are feeding on the pollen and the nectar that the plants use to attract insects to pollinate themselves. So several different answers there. And sparrows, again, favour yellow crocuses, and so much the fury of many gardeners, you'll see all the crocus petals on the ground, and what they're actually after is the male part of the crocus, the anthers in there, which have lots of pollen on, and that's an important food source for them.
We're going to tell you about a new video on the High Ash Farm Facebook site in a moment, quite a spectacular one. Also, we'll give the answer away to Chris's rural riddle. Well, Chris will tell us. If we're nice to him, he might divulge the answer, if you please. We'll do that in a few minutes. But right now, you've brought in some birds' nests with you this evening, haven't you? This is a bit unusual.
I have. I'm sort of bringing us up to date with the saga of the Tesco store south of Norwich. If you remember, about this time a year ago, the front of the store was suddenly covered with netting to keep the swallows out for health and safety reasons, because the swallows were nesting under the area where the trolleys were stored. And I sort of talked to the management there and eventually persuaded the netting to all come down and the swallows be allowed to nest. A lot of people were incensed by this, but I kind of did it in a very kind way and very thoughtfully. I managed to get the management to listen to Radio Norfolk here, and particularly the Countryside Hour, and eventually, it's taken nearly a year, we've had a complete change round, and we've just had an agreement where at the moment I've supplied 15 swallow nesting boxes to be erected by Tesco store staff because of health and safety reasons all around the front of the store, and they'll be going up this week.
So is that what this is in the box?
I brought a box in here, and I'll pass it over to you.
Let's have a look at this.
To look at. They're professionally made nest boxes made from cement and paper mache, and they're really classy, very, very sturdy, very strong. And there you are, Matthew.
So that goes up one. Like a cup? Up.
It's like a cup. It's like a...
Facing up.
So facing upwards, and it will go up where the swallows were nesting, not right above the entrance door. Management said because of the droppings that can drop drop down into people's trolleys. It might be a health and safety issue, so we're not actually putting the artificial ones right above the entrance to the store where people walk in, but that won't stop the swallows perhaps rebuilding the nest. The reason the netting was put up is the store needed painting. It looked a bit a bit tired, and it's all been repainted, the old nest taken down, which is quite legal to do out of the nesting season. So we hope those 15 nest boxes will attract swallows this coming back this year, so it's a welcome rather than anything else. And a huge thank you to store management, particularly Gareth, the manager of the store there. Big pat on the back. And but there's good news there. We're going to welcome them back. But at the moment, there are some fierce winds over the Sahara, particularly Spanish West Sahara, which I visited, and Mauritania. Right over the Sahara. It's 1,000 miles from south to north, and it's caught our swallows exactly like it did last year. We had about half the population wiped out, returning to high ash. Only half the numbers returned.
Was this the sandstorms we've been reading about?
Sandstorm which you have heard about affecting some of the Canary Islands, particularly Lanzarote and Fuerteventura. Lanzarote is one of my favourite places. I go there, and then I've flown across into the Sahara, which is only about 30 miles. You can almost see the west coast of Africa from the Canary Islands. It's a very short flight, and I got sunburn under my chin there. I was only there a few hours. It was 41 degrees centigrade when I was there.
How these lovely little birds can survive,
I have no idea. It's one of the mysteries, but hopefully some of the swallows will make it back. High Ash Farm's certainly going to welcome them, and thanks to Tesco, a huge turnaround there, and thank you very much to the store, and the employees are hugely enthusiastic about this, and fingers crossed we might be able to get a camera on one of the nests where the children have their free fruit and veg, and one of the nest cams, so it doesn't interfere with the store safety security system, and fingers crossed we'll be allowed to put a little camera up there and watch the parents feeding the young.
We're nearly there with the rural riddle. Just a quick one about the video that's on the Facebook page at the moment, though. You've got a lovely close-up of, there's Jack Jay about to go on the air, but this is a proper jay.
This is a proper jay, yes, exactly, in its summer plumage with the beautiful blue and black coverts on the wing. And in the background, there's at least half a dozen high ash, very yellow hammers indeed. That was accidental. I was actually after the jay. They're still busy collecting, and they'll be nesting, members of the crow family, nesting any day soon.
So that's there on the High Ash Farm Facebook page. A jay and yellow hammers, and there'll be a jay on the radio in 2.5 minutes.
There will.
So before he evicts us,
yes,
we better get the answer to your mystery sound. Here's the sound that we've been phoning in about. Got a couple more for goldfinch. Stephen Thuxton says it's a goldfinch with a pigeon. Basil, who lives in Eton in Norwich, says it's a blackcap. And Charles in Elsing agrees, a blackcap. And in fact, that's the answer that's been most numerous this evening.
Excellent. Most of our answers are correct. Anybody who said blackcap, particularly with wood pigeon in the background, is bang on the money. Is 7 out of 10 score. Well done.
So those who got this right, blackcap includes Basil and Charles and Steve. And much earlier we heard from Bob in Beccles. I think he was first through. We also had Chris in Wyndham saying blackcap, George in Fretnam. And who else? Oh, Jeff. Jeff in Rocklands near Attleborough says this is a sound of a blackcap establishing his territory.
Yes, and it's exactly what it was doing. It's a male singing away, and what a lovely way to sort of announce your boundaries by singing.
I'll have to try it one of these days. At least all invaders will move away, won't they then? Matt and Al got it right, and Madeline was absolutely spot on, calling from Snettisham, which is pretty much bird central Snettisham, isn't there? There's bird hides on the marshes there. Blackcap and wood pigeon in the background. I think Madeline gets a tick. Very good.
And a big pat on the back as well. Congratulations. Anyway, Matthew, we've just about reached the end of the railway line tonight. We're just arriving at Yarmouth Station.
Hit the buffers in a minute.
There's some very big buffers at the end of the railway line. It looks kind of like Jack Jay in a funny sort of way, but I hope we're not going to crash into him. But just to finish off, sound of frogs. Maybe you'll be hearing this after 7 o'clock when he starts speaking.
This is the frog chorus, isn't it?
Yes.
Are they wooing each
They're
other?
hard at it at the moment.
Chris Skinner, see you soon.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Countryside Hour podcast from BBC Radio Norfolk. You can hear the Countryside Hour live on the station every Monday evening at 6 o'clock.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.